So you might be thinking for your first art exhibit, you should do it solo so you can get as much attention as possible to your own artwork. However, unless you already have a large following, not a lot of people are going to show up to your exhibit, besides like a few family members and some of your close friends. Other than that, it's going to look like a ghost town. This is why I suggest for your first art exhibit, you should collaborate with other artists at an event. Now, obviously, by this point, you think you'd be competing with other artists, but you shouldn't really look at it as like a competition thing to see like, oh, who gets like the most amount of people to walk up to the art. You should just look at it as an opportunity to connect with other people. You know, sure, you might not be in the spotlight, but there's going to be a lot more people at the event. So, a lot more people that could potentially see your work versus if you were to do it on your own and have nobody show up. So if you do it at an event with other artists, you get a lot more opportunities for people to walk up and want to start talking with you, having a conversation about, hey, you know how'd you go about this artwork, or what was the process like, what was the idea behind it. There's so much more you could benefit from if you do this at an event versus like doing it solo. And obviously, since there's other artists there at this exhibit, pick their brain a little bit, see how they go about their workflow. Ask them questions. Try to get as much information as possible. Utilize the time that you have while you're there. I think most artists are pretty open to sharing, whatever tips that they have or advice that they have to give you. So just don't be scared to ask them at an exhibit. Like I said, don't think of it as like you're competing to see who gets the most amount of people to walk up to the artwork. Just treat it as an exhibit. You're showing your art. You're showing the work that you put in over the past few months, and that's what it is. Not everything has to be a competition. So I think for most of us artists, I would say a lot of us are introverts. We're not very outgoing people. So obviously during your first exhibit, you might feel a little out of it, a little anxious. But that feeling of, you being anxious and nervous is part of the process. Just because you feel nervous is not going to stop you from displaying your artwork to everybody else. You know what I mean? So don't worry too much about you being nervous, because as soon as someone walks up to you and wants to spark up a conversation, you will be surprised at how easy it is to actually have that conversation with that person. Just because you're talking about something that you genuinely enjoy. You know what I mean? In this case, it's art. So, the more you have these conversations with different people throughout the day of your exhibit, the less nervous you'll feel about it. And then, you look back at it and think, why did I even feel nervous in the first place? I'm literally doing something that I enjoy. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about you being nervous. Like, we're all human. We all feel emotions. And being nervous is just, like I said, part of that process. And eventually, the more exhibits you have, the less nervous you feel. It's like, a singer going up to perform in front of an audience. Obviously, the singer, they're going to feel nervous, but they still perform, right? Because they spent all those hours practicing beforehand. So now they're just showing the world their skills. That's all it is. It's just showing your skills off to the world. That's really all it is. And it's kind of similar with you showing your art at an exhibit. You already put in a large amount of hours painting and drawing, and now you're just showing it to different people. And people are going to want to ask questions about it, and you'll be surprised at how much you can answer just because you're the one that made those. I think another thing too is people worry about that they wouldn't know what to say about their artwork. Like they don't know how to explain like the idea behind why they created what they did. But it's actually a lot easier than you think, simply because you're the one that made it. So you're the only one that truly understands what the artwork is and what it means. So, I mean, people could ask you like any type of questions, like, why'd you choose these specific colors, or, why'd you go with this specific silhouette, or what was your inspiration behind it, and you know, you'll be able to answer all those questions again because you're the one that made it. So you know what reference you looked up, you know what you did for the sketch, you know why you chose those specific colors, why you went with that specific silhouette. So it's a lot easier once you're in the flow of the conversation. Like at first you might think like, yeah, I don't really know what to say about this. This is my art, you know what I mean? And I made this. That's it. But to be honest, like when people ask you about it, you will surprise yourself at how much you could actually explain it, and in great detail too. So yeah, don't worry about not being able to explain your artwork. You will be able to explain it. It's a lot easier than you think it is, to be honest. So yeah, don't even trip about that. The last point that I want to bring up here is, and this is the most important part, networking. This is why I say your first exhibit should be a collab at an event, because it gives you the chance to network with a lot of people, and that opens the doors to a lot of opportunities that you wouldn't have if you just did a solo exhibit. In order to be successful, it does take networking. Networking and a lot of luck is pretty much the blueprint to be successful. Talk to as many people as you can, pick their brain, you know, ask them questions, answer their questions, just have those conversations with as many people as possible, because you never know who you're going to run into. And you know, they might give you an opportunity for a job opening at a studio that you really wanted to work at. You just never know until you have those conversations with the people at your exhibit. So yeah, just network. That, if anything, just have that in the back of your mind throughout the entire day of your exhibit. Let that be the focus. You're showing up there to, yeah, show off your art a little bit, but also to network. Can't stress that enough. Try to just get connected in with as many people as possible. So for me, during my first exhibit, I actually was really lucky that I had the opportunity to work with one of my friends who was also an artist at that time. So we both created this Demon Slayer fan art, and we made a bunch of posters about it, and you know, we sold them. I think it was like $30 each, and we actually sold quite a few that day. So it was a pretty good day. And I think just my friend being there made me feel a lot less nervous compared to like when I did, you know, a similar thing where I went to an event to do an exhibit, but it was me, you know, walking into a room full of strangers. So obviously I felt, you know, a little bit more on edge. But yeah, when I was with my friend, it did make the process of my first exhibit a lot easier, I will say. If you have a friend that's also an artist, you know, try to collaborate with each other, you know, set up an exhibit, find an event nearby where you live at, and, you know, go from there. So for me, all my exhibits were in Tokyo. I got really lucky. I got connected in with really good people, and, you know, they helped me set up an exhibit at their event. You know, they had a lot of stuff going on there. They had music, you know, DJs, food, live paintings, you know, sometimes people would sell their merch. So it was a lot going on at the event. So I'm glad that I was a part of it, because there's a lot of people that showed up too as well. So it just gave me the chance to get connected in and meet so many different types of people. And you know, I will be forever grateful for that opportunity that I got. But yeah, that's pretty much the video. Hopefully you guys learned something useful today. You know, I'm gonna try to pump out videos like this a little bit more often moving forward. But you know, other than that, that's pretty much all I got. If you liked the video, you know, go ahead and share it. Other than that, I'm out.